Hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon when you are watching this video lecture. In the earlier session, we discussed about the conceptual aspects of the head of income, profits and gains of business or profession, and also try to understand the overall scope of this head of income. And most importantly, this head of income is having a particular requirement of understanding what deductions are available as expenditure or loss from the revenue and what deductions are not available. That will be the major scope of this head of income PGBP. But before going to the deductions part, let us first understand the charging section of this PGBP, which is contained in section 28. If you really go through section 28 in the Income Tax Act, that itself runs into number of pages, and most of that might not be even useful for us also. That is why, once again, rather than going from definitions point of view, let us go from conceptual point of view, or particular points which will be treated as incomes under this head of PGBP according to section 28 in a nutshell. Of course, naturally, as the head indicates, profit and gain of any business or profession will be definitely taxable. That is a core thing, and that is the only thing actually that we will most of the times look at in this chapter. But not only that, there are certain other things also which could be taxable under this head of income. We should know them, because if some point comes related to these items, we should understand if these are taxable in this particular head. What are those things? Normally, profit and gain of any business or profession is self-explanatory. That is a profit or gain. And of course, as we know already, income always includes negative income also. It could be loss also, but we don't use the word. We use the word profit or gain only. That is taxable anyway. But not only that, there are some other things also. Like what? Like compensation or any other payment due to or received by an Indian company or other company in India for termination or modification of the terms of an agency. Any compensation is received for modification or termination of the terms of agency will be taxable under this head. Even if this point is not there also, we would have made it taxable under this head only, because it is also incidental to business, right? Just for understanding purposes, let us say in Hyderabad, Maruti Suzuki was having a dealer, let us say, called Varun Motors. And while giving dealership to Varun Motors, maybe they would have entered into an agreement saying that it will be the only dealer in entire Hyderabad. After some time, maybe because of the business requirements, Maruti Suzuki would have given this dealership to another player also, like Mitra Agencies, Sabu, somebody else. Then Varun Motors will not agree. So they will require some compensation. If Maruti Suzuki gives such compensation to them, that will be taxable as PGBP, because it is also business income. There is nothing special in that. If there is any termination of an agency contract or modification of the terms of an agency contract, compensation received or earned in respect thereof is taxable under PGBP. And income derived by trade, professional or similar association from specific services. Specific services. We discussed this earlier, if you recollect, called as the theory of agency, the theory of mutual benefit, where there is the principle of mutuality, we can call it. For example, once again, only example, not real. ICAI renders certain specific services to the members. Say, for example, conducting some seminars and some kind of conferences or some courses to the members and gets some money from the members. That would be taxable as income, that we understood earlier. And where it will be taxable? Under PGBP it will be taxable. But why we are using the word specific services here? Because if any trade professional or similar association performs generic services to the members, that is not at all taxable, because that is mutuality. I cannot earn income from myself. So similarly, a trade professional or a similar association cannot earn income from its own members, because members and that association both are same. They are not different. But that is for general things like annual subscription, those things. Those are not incomes at all. But if any specific services are performed, then they are incomes, and definitely those will be taxable under the head of PGBP. And we discussed this with examples like clubs also earlier. Same logic applies. Annual club membership paid by the members is not taxable for the club. Why? Because it is mutuality. A member is paying to club means he is paying to himself. It is like just a pool of money among the members themselves, they are utilizing for themselves. So there is no point of income in that case. But if the same club operates or organizes a function or a party, annual day function or something like a New Year party, and earns some profit out of that specific event, that will be taxable, and that will be taxable under PGBP. And not only the money, even perquisite also, the benefit or perquisite, whether convertible into money or not, arising from business or profession, also is taxable. For example, if a doctor gets a gold ring from his patient in appreciation of his services to the patient, the value of that gold ring will be also treated as his professional income, legally speaking. Whether he will tell that ring is there or not is a secondary story. We are always thinking that the SSC will disclose everything. With that assumption only we have to work on. If that assumption is gone, this entire Income Tax Act itself, we can just throw it away. So, if there is any perquisite in kind received by any person from their customers or clients or patients, whatever you call them, that also will be taxable as business income. So what should we understand from this is, there is no necessity that the business income has to be in money form only, not necessary. Even if it is not in money form, still it would be taxable under this head of income. That is the essence of fourth point. And there are some other things like import licenses, duty entitlement passbook scheme, etc., duty-free replenishment certificate. We don't need to know all of them. But one thing very clear, these are all related to import-export. We can generally call them as entitlements. Import entitlements we can call them, which will give a particular person a license kind from the government to import something. If he transfers that license to somebody else, whatever the profit arising out of the transfer is not a capital gain, it is a PGBP. That's what this means. So the sale of import entitlements is taxable under PGBP. Not only that, same way the export incentives which are available to the exporters, like for example duty drawback or cash assistance, will be taxable under PGBP. All these things, import, duty entitlement passbook, duty drawback, these are all the items which will be learned in final level under Customs Act. We don't need to know the details of them. There are so many of them in the Customs Act. But what we should just know here is, yes, there is something called import license. Name itself indicates. Let us say somebody got a license to import some 1 lakh mobile phones. That is a license only. And he transfers that license to somebody else, if that license allows him to do so. And he makes money out of that. Not by importing, by transferring that license. Then such profit is taxable under PGBP. Same way duty drawback is an export incentive, other side of it. This logic of duty drawback we should know even now also, because logic at least we should know, because it has a similarity with the GST credit. Similarity, not same. What is duty drawback is, for example, if somebody imports certain goods, say raw diamonds, pays some customs duty on that, heavy customs duty is there on them. And after importing those raw diamonds, he will do some polishing work in Mumbai or Gujarat. So many units are there like that. And then they re-export those polished, actual, final shaped diamonds. So what is this duty drawback scheme is telling about is, while you export the final product, whatever the original import duty that you have paid, that is customs duty, can be refunded. That can be given back. So you call it duty drawback. So imagine he has imported some 100 crores worth of diamonds, raw diamonds, and he paid some, let us say 20 crores of import customs duty. He has to pay first. But after doing some work and all, when he exports them, he can claim that 20 crores back. So while he imported, customs duty was a cost. Now naturally, when that cost is reversed, that becomes income. That is why we call that also as income under the head of PGBP. That is duty drawback, cash assistance, etc. So export incentives is the word you should remember. Import entitlements is the word you should remember. Both of them are taxable under PGBP. Import entitlements, if they are transferred, they are taxed. The profit from that transfer is taxable under PGBP, not capital gains. It is not a capital asset, import entitlement. Export incentives are anyway money benefits, which is a reversal of cost actually. That will be definitely treated as income. That logic we should always keep in mind. A simple point is, when you had a cost, you claimed it as a deduction, as an expenditure when you really incurred it earlier. Now, when there is a reversal of that, it has to be treated as income. Opposite of cost is income. That is the only logic. Or from accounting point of view, earlier you debited to the P&L account and added it to, let us say, the cost of purchases earlier. Now you are getting it back. Now that becomes income. That's all. So it will be also treated as income under PGBP as per section 28. And non-compete fees also is treated as PGBP. Sometimes there will be money that is received for not carrying out any activity. That is also a possible way of earning money. Not carrying out activity also sometimes gives money. Money can be earned by doing something, and in some cases by not doing something also money can be earned. For example, if you understand this way, going to a mall or a cinema theater, not now, normally under normal days, you see particular areas, particular places will have only Coca-Cola products. They will not have Pepsi products at all. Why is that? Is the seller a fan of Coca-Cola? Definitely not. Or does he hate Pepsi? Definitely not. There was an agreement between Coca-Cola and that seller not to keep Pepsi products. Both are there. The agreement was to keep Coca-Cola products. If that was the agreement only, there is no problem. The seller can keep Pepsi also, according to his choice, and customers will drink whatever they want. But no, that agreement not only had the clause of having Coca-Cola products, that agreement also had not to have any other product other than Coca-Cola products. Means it is restricting, non-compete. No competitor's product should be there with my product. Is an agreement, what they have entered. And why the seller is so happy to enter into that agreement without having any financial benefit? Definitely not. So he will receive some kind of financial benefit from the Coca-Cola in our example. That is also taxable. Not only that, sometimes there may be a know-how or a patent or copyright. If you share it, you can earn income, but sometimes you might earn income when not sharing that knowledge or know-how or patent also. If anything is like that, then also that will be treated as PGBP. And though illegal, but this is practically what happens mostly in the tenders, contracts. Let us say there is a road contract that is announced in the newspaper. Some 5-6 contractors are very much interested in tendering for that contract. What usually also happens, though illegal and all, but practically what happens is, some of the people will contact among themselves and they say, boss, for this particular contract you don't submit your bid. Stay away from this contract and bid process. Why the other person will agree that? Okay, muscle power, rowdyism, what we see in movies, that is all separate thing. But the person might be given some money for staying away from the contract, for staying away from the bidding process. In other words, for not doing something. He is not getting money for doing some activity, he is getting money for not carrying out any activity. Such type of money also will be taxable under PGBP, if there is anything like that. And the sum received under Keyman insurance policy, including bonus on such policy, will be taxable under PGBP. Of course, when? If the sum is received by the employer. Keyman insurance policy, always, whenever this word comes, 3 things should immediately pop up in our mind. Who is the one finally receiving the proceeds of the policy? That should be the core point. If employee receives it, fully taxable in the hands of employee. If employer receives, then also it is taxable. But now, under the head of PGBP. In case of employee, it was taxable under the head of salaries. What if somebody else, like for example, legal heirs of employee has received such proceeds? Then also it will be taxable fully, but under the head of income from other sources. So Keyman insurance policy proceeds are always taxable. Only question comes, which head of income? Depends upon who received it. Employee received salaries, employer received PGBP. That's what we are talking about now. If somebody else received income from other sources, that's all. And income from speculative transactions is also PGBP. Actually, in ICA material, there is a huge discussion on speculation, blah, blah, blah. We don't have to get into that because it is completely abstract and difficult to understand at this level. But only thing what I can say is, don't try to imagine a transaction as a speculative transaction. We are not the ones to define what is a speculative transaction, what is not a speculative transaction. That is none of our business. Let us not imagine that. Why I am telling this is, lot of people will have this creative thought, naturally, which is not wrong, but we feel, I also agree with that. What about buying and selling shares in stock market? Is it speculative or not? If I ask a question, most of you would say, yes, it is speculative. But no, as per law, it is not a speculative transaction. So like this, so many contradictions are there. What we normally think and what the law says completely are different. So point is, we don't need to enter into that speculative area of business in this chapter, in this head of income. But one point we should remember, important thing, what is useful for us, that we should remember. What is that? PGBP does not distinguish between any business and speculative business. Doesn't matter. Speculative transactions income also is considered as income under the head of PGBP. But one more point is there. The books of accounts have to be maintained for speculative business separately. That's all. In other words, the transactions related to the speculative business and transactions related to a normal business cannot be mixed up. Separate books of accounts have to be maintained for speculative business. Why? We will come to that later. But at least now what we should know, speculative business is also a business. It is also income that is taxable under PGBP. And most importantly, if a person is having both speculative and non-speculative business, he should maintain the books of accounts separately. That's all. Nothing else. Sir, what is speculative transaction? My answer would be not required to know at this level. Why? Because in the exam questions, it will be given that it is a speculative transaction. We don't have to identify that. It will be given. This is speculative business. Income from speculative business. He will give the money. When it is already telling that it is speculative transaction, what is there for us to define it separately? Not required. So we can skip such type of unnecessary things, which are of course there in the ICA material. As I said, With all those things only, the ICI material has 189 pages of PGBP chapter, which is so vast. And what we are trying to understand and go through is the summary of that. More than summary of that, the useful part of that. There is so much of things which are not useful at this level, and they're not going to really add any value also for understanding this chapter. So no need to waste time on that. That's why speculative, non-speculative. That's all. These are the only two words that we should know. If nothing is mentioned, normally everything is non-speculative only. You should not speculate about whether a business is speculative or not. None. That is not our job. Don't assume that business is speculative. Not. There are so many things that require to be satisfied in order to call something a speculative transaction. Actually, the law has defined what is not a speculative transaction in such a way that there is no speculative transaction that is left over. So we don't have to worry about all that. Simply speaking, two businesses, if SSC has one speculative, one non-speculative, he has to maintain books of accounts separately. Dot. That is enough. Then another point, 10th point here is the sum received in cash or kind. See, cash or kind is always there. We don't have to separately tell that every time. On account of any capital asset. Capital asset being demolished, destroyed, discarded or transferred. If the whole expenditure is allowed as deduction under 35 AD, which we will discuss later anyway. But logic again you have to keep in mind. Because the topic has come, we should know this also. There are certain variety sections in PGBP where capital expenditure is also allowed as deduction fully. So we should definitely know the distinction between capital expenditure and revenue expenditure from accounts point of view. Revenue expenditure is debited to the P&L account. Capital expenditure is shown as an asset on the asset side of balance sheet, of course, subject to any depreciation each of the years. That depreciation portion only will be debited to the P&L account. In other words, simple words, revenue expenditure is charged against the revenue in one shot as a debit to P&L. Capital expenditure is also charged against revenue, but not in one shot, in installments. And what do we call that installment as? That is what is depreciation. So, normally for accounting purposes, logic also, capital expenditure cannot be allowed as deduction. It cannot be treated as a debit to P&L. But that is accounting. We are talking tax. Certain provisions to encourage certain types of businesses in Income Tax Act will allow the SSC to even consider the capital expenditure as a full deduction. In normal P&L account, you cannot debit an asset to the P&L account. But here, capital expenditure is also allowed as deduction, though it is against the normal principles. We are not talking normal principles here, we are talking law. Law allows under section 35 AD, for example, also under section 35 also, there are certain areas where the law will give deduction for capital expenditure also. That means the entire asset cost has been already written off. Already it has been charged against the revenue. To that extent, profits have already been reduced completely in one shot. After getting this benefit, after 1 or 2 years, let us say, SSC behaves oversmart and sells that asset. Already you have claimed a 100% deduction on that expenditure in the form of purchasing the asset, and then you are selling that asset. No problem, sell that. But if you sell that, will that be a capital gain because it is a capital asset? No. It will be still treated as PGBP. Why? Simple logic. When you allowed something as a deduction earlier, now that situation is reversed. Automatically that becomes taxable. The logic wise, even duty drawback also similar. No? Earlier you claimed customs duty paid on import as deduction. Now you got it back. So call it as income. Earlier in this case, you have claimed a deduction for the capital expenditure under 35 or 35 AD. Now you are reversing that by selling it off. Then naturally whatever the money received will become taxable. Because you claimed a deduction earlier. Now that situation has been reversed. Or can they not sell their entire life and all? No, there are conditions there. Those things we'll discuss in the latter part of this chapter. But at least logically we should understand now that any expenditure which has been claimed as deduction earlier, if that situation is reversed, that expenditure earlier which was allowed as deduction now becomes income. That is a simple logic. Everywhere you have to apply. In this chapter, multiple times we will apply that. That is why I said this is a logical chapter. If you understand the logic, same thing will be applied in different places. Duty drawback also same logic. Actually, key man insurance policy also same logic. Why? Because when the employer has paid key man insurance policy premium on the lives of some key personnel in his company, in his business, that was debited to P&L because that was expenditure for that employer earlier. Now he got a return on that or proceeds of the key man insurance policy which got matured. So earlier debited, now it has to be treated as income. Same logic applies to duty drawback also. And same logic applies to assets sold. Even though they are capital assets, still any sum received by transferring those capital assets will still be treated as PGBP, since a deduction already has been claimed under this head of income earlier. When the reversal of such situation happens now in the form of demolition, destruction, discarding or transfer, the situation has to be reversed. Earlier it was allowed as deduction, now it becomes taxable. That is part of section 28. Then another important point, this also I think we discussed earlier, but once again very important point to note. Any interest on capital or interest on loan or salary or other remuneration received by a partner from the partnership firm or LLP shall be chargeable to tax under PGBP. They shall be chargeable to tax under PGBP. Remuneration, because it is salary to partner, it cannot be taxed in the hands of the partner under the head of salaries. No, we already discussed that in the chapter of salaries. So salary to partner, remuneration to partner will be taxable under PGBP in the hands of partner, whoever earns it. Same way, interest on capital or interest on loan, that is not taxable under income from other sources for partner. It will be taxable under PGBP only. But to what extent? To the extent it was allowed as an expenditure in the hands of the firm under section 40B, which we'll discuss anyway later, because the firms would have debited this as an expenditure. Which one? Remuneration paid to the partner, or interest on capital to the partner, or interest on loan to the partner. These are expenses for the firm. They would have debited their P&L. But according to 40B, there are restrictions on that. So it would not be fair to allow a deduction which is lower, and on the other hand for the income earner to make it fully taxable. So what extent the amount will be taxable in the hands of the partner? It is the same amount which was allowed as deduction to the firm under 40B. So for the expenditure part, there is a restriction on 40B. Whatever amount is allowed under section 40B is the same amount which will be treated as income of the partner under the head of PGBP only, that also. For one person, which is a firm, it is expenditure. For another person who is a partner, that is income. But taxable under this head, that is PGBP. One more thing is added recently, that is when an inventory is converted into a capital asset, then the fair market value of that inventory will be treated as PGBP. Inventory is converted into capital asset. There are two things here which we will discuss in next chapter, capital gains also. And by the way, let me also give a heads up. PGBP and capital gains are very closely related chapters. A lot of things will have commonalities. Conceptually, if you understand certain areas here, it will be same things which will be again useful under the head of capital gains also later. So, keeping that commonalities apart, this transaction is of two types. One, conversion of capital asset into stock in trade or inventory, or conversion of inventory into capital asset. These are the two possibilities. Now, what is the position of the law? Simply speaking, when a capital asset is converted, capital asset is converted into stock in trade, or you can call it inventory, then that is capital gain. Because what is getting transferred there is a capital asset. Though it is not going to some other third party. Same person, the treatment is changing from being a capital asset to a stock in trade, whatever that fair market value of that capital asset will be treated as if that is the consideration that he has received on that date of conversion of capital asset into stock in trade under the chapter of capital gains. And what we are talking about here is reverse. Now, stock in trade is converted into capital asset. So, capital asset converted to stock in trade, this is capital gains chapter. Stock in trade converted to capital asset, that is PGBP. See, normally speaking, what is stock in trade? That we sell. If you sold it to outsider, anyway it is revenue. But now it is not sold to outsider, it is converted into a capital asset. Still it is treated as taxable. But there is no third party involved in this. We did not sell to anybody. There is no consideration actually received. So that is why what we will take as the value of that, that is fair market value of that inventory which was converted into capital asset on the date of conversion will be treated as taxable under head of PGBP according to section 28. These are the various items. I would say some of the items taxable under the head of PGBP under section 28. So this gives the first part of PGBP, taxability part. Remaining is deductibility part. But basically PGBP is about more of deductions. But yes, still we cannot leave this section 28 because this is a charging section. You need to remember these names very well. Of course, PGBP means the profits and gain of any business or profession, that is taxable here. Any compensation on the termination or modification of the terms of agency is also taxable here. Income derived by a trade, professional or any other similar association by rendering specific services to the members is taxable here. Even if any benefit is received in the form of perquisite also by any person, that will also be taxable here, though it is not received in money form. So PGBP does not distinguish, for that matter Income Tax Act itself does not distinguish between money earned in cash or money earned in kind. Both are same. Import entitlements sale, any profit derived from that is taxable here. Export incentives are taxable here. Non-compete fees is taxable here. Proceeds of key man insurance policy received by employer are taxable here. Even though income is received from speculative transactions, still it is taxable under PGBP, though the books of accounts have to be maintained separately for normal business and speculative business. And if there is any deduction which was claimed earlier under section 35 or 35 AD, even though those were capital expenditure, now when such asset is sold, what are the sale proceeds received from such sale of asset is taxable under PGBP. See, law will not use the word sale, it will tell 100 other things. We don't need to worry about them. Demolished, destroyed, discarded, transferred, all things can happen practically. Law will keep all the options open. But what is the essence of that? That we should understand. For understanding the concept, we don't need all those list of names. Sale, simply speaking. You claimed a deduction earlier by incurring some capital expenditure. Now you are selling that asset. So you got a benefit. That benefit is taxable. Simple. That's all. Same way for partners, very important thing. Interest on capital or interest on loan or remuneration or salary or commission or whatever the name that is called, any benefit received by the partner from the partnership firm or LLP shall be taxable in the hands of partner under the head of PGBP. That too, to the extent the same is allowed as a deduction in the hands of the firm under section 40B. So both should be matched in amounts. And if there is any conversion of stock in trade into capital asset, that is also taxable under PGBP. But how much amount? Naturally, the fair market value of that asset on the date of conversion. Which asset we are talking? Inventory, which was converted into a capital asset. So that is taxable under PGBP. Now also let us understand, this will not be given in the law, but for our understanding purposes, quickly, what are the incomes that are not taxable under the head of PGBP, which are not taxable under PGBP? Let us look at them. Dividend is not at all taxable under PGBP. It will be taxable under income from other sources, even though The shares are held as stock in trade. Keep that in mind. Even though the shares are held as stock in trade, still the dividend earned from them is not taxable under PGBP. Important point to note. That is not following the logic, but law says so. So you have to understand, dividend in all cases will be taxable under income from other sources only. Same way, exempted income naturally will not be taxable. For example, agricultural income exempt under section 10(1). It will not be taxable under PGBP. It is exempt means exempt, by the way. And in certain cases, any gain or loss on the business assets will not be taxable here under PGBP, but it will be taxable under capital gains. We see these things normally, other type of business assets, except these three. Out of them, we already know whatever we're talking about. For example, the sale of an asset used for scientific research, claimed exemption under section 35 earlier. Now, sale of an asset is taxable under PGBP. Sale of asset by power sector undertakings is taxable under PGBP. Sale of asset in respect of which already deduction was claimed under 35 AD, taxable under PGBP. So logic is same for all. You claimed a deduction under PGBP earlier. Now, reversal of that situation will make it taxable under PGBP. Other than them, other business assets, if they are sold and any gain or loss is there arising from that, that will be taxable under capital gains, but not PGBP. Then, casual incomes will never be taxable under PGBP, even though the SSC says my business itself is to buy lottery tickets. My business itself is to go and bet on the horse races. SC can say that. He says that it is my profession. I only gamble. My profession is to go and play gambling in casinos, let us say. Though not available throughout India. Yeah, there are places like Goa, some places where there is casinos and other gambling things are there. Same way, horse races are legal in India. That is a variety. Playing cards is not legal. Lotteries is legal. That too in some states it is illegal. Horse races is legal. Lot of big race courses will be there. And there will be horse races getting conducted. People will go there and bet on those horses and sometimes lose, sometimes win. If they win money, imagine a person is there whose job is only doing this daily. Still he cannot say it is his profession. Always it shall be taxable as income from other sources. So the dividend income and casual income can never be taxable under PGBP. These two things straight away always go to income from other sources. Other points are very direct things. Exempted incomes are anyway exempt, so they will not be taxable. And assets, if they are sold, since they are capital assets, those will be taxable, the gain or loss of them, from under the head of capital gains. Exceptions are there, where you already claimed a full deduction, or deductions for capital expenditure also was claimed earlier in respect of power sector undertakings or specified businesses under 35 AD or assets acquired for scientific research under section 35. In those cases, because you claimed a deduction under PGBP earlier, reversal of that situation will make it taxable under PGBP only. That is the exception. Other than that, other business assets are sold, and if there is any gain or loss coming out of that, that will be taxable under capital gains. We will come to this. This is a very interesting and important aspect. The link between capital gains and PGBP, particularly the assets, the business assets, depreciable assets. We will come to that as part of discussion under section 32 related to depreciation. Of course, some general points also to be noted. Whatever the income that we have understood above under section 28, that shall be computed in accordance with the provisions contained in section 32(43). That's what we are going to do. And not only that, computation of income under PGBP for income tax purposes is different. That's what I told yesterday also. That is different from income as per books of accounts. These two are not same. As per books of accounts, income is different. That is using accounting principles. Of course, changing them only according to the provisions of the Income Tax Act. We will arrive at the profits and gains of business or profession according to Income Tax Act. That has nothing to do with the company's real profits. For example, if you look at an annual report of a company, what profit they are showing? Is it PGBP? Definitely not. That is a profit as per books of accounts. PGBP has to be separately computed. And a question might come, will there be separate books of accounts for tax and will there be separate books of accounts for accounts? That is useless, no? Not required. Accounts will be maintained only as per accounts. For tax, what we can do? We can do adjustments according to the provisions of the Act, plus minus, and arrive at PGBP for income tax purposes. That's what we call as indirect method. Or if you directly take only the taxable incomes and deductible expenses, find out profit taxable under PGBP, that is called a direct method. These also we have discussed yesterday. Of course, we will apply them extensively later, so we will understand them in detail when we apply them also. But names themselves indicate indirect method is more like a reconciliation. Starting with accounting profits, plus minus, you got PGBP. Direct method is direct. Take only incomes which are taxable under 28. Deduct expenses which are deductible somewhere between section 30 to 37. That's all. You got PGBP. So both methods can be followed according to the information that is available. These are the basic aspects related to this topic and head of income, profits and gains of business or profession. Section 28 being a charging section. So far you can also observe this is the biggest charging section, naturally, because this is the biggest head of income also. Definitely we need to know all these items which are all taxable under PGBP, which are not taxable under PGBP, and in general how PGBP is computed. What is the procedure for that computation of PGBP? That is the introduction, I would say, our charging section discussion related to PGBP. And in the next session, we will discuss some more conceptual aspects only. Still, we are not entering into the real provisions of the Act. But those will be important to understand. As I said, if we understand these aspects, that will be easier from a conceptual point of view and a logical point of view rather than legal point of view. So what are those points to be noted before we enter into the real provisions related to deductions ranging between 30 to 37? Those aspects we will discuss in the next session. Till then, take care. Bye-bye. Thank you very much.